Global Entrepreneurship Week is the world's largest celebration of innovators and job creators who launch startups that bring ideas to life, drive economic growth, and expand human welfare. During 1 week, each November, Global Entrepreneurship Week inspires people everywhere through local, national, and global activities designed to help them explore their potential as self-starters and innovators. One organization that participated in events here in Johannesburg is Ruckus Wireless, a US-based IT company expanding its horizons in sub-Saharan Africa and Africa at large. Well, to discuss the state of entrepreneurship in Africa, I have with me Bruce Pitso, the Regional Manager of Ruckus Wireless in South Africa. Welcome to Leading Opinion. What a pleasure to meet you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So you've had a great week. I mean, it's been very inspirational for me.
It has been. What I've discovered is, in the past couple of weeks or month, we saw the stats from the World Economic Forum that basically says South Africa has moved up a couple of notches, 4 spaces to be exact, and that was purely based on technology. So for someone like me who is in that space, actually just shows you how important technology is, and it's actually a great entrepreneurial tool for.
I'm sure opportunities in that space that you're in is probably exploding in Africa right now.
They are. I mean, if you look at what's happening locally, if you look in other African countries where people are developing certain applications just to change people's lives. Looking at Nigeria, looking at Kenya and South Africa itself, it is a powerful tool, and it shouldn't be taken for granted.
What are the challenges in that space, though, when it comes to SME challenges?
I think the whole mentorship discussion comes into play. Funding and investment is another challenge. But what I've also realized is access to technology. You know, where we on the continent where certain technologies are relatively quite expensive, and for people to get access to that kind of technology, that creates one of the big challenges.
Very interesting that you mentioned we've climbed up 4 notches from the World Economic Report on entrepreneurship. During what space of time? That's interesting because a lot of leaders that I've interacted with say that the state of entrepreneurship in South Africa is still comparably low compared to its sub-Saharan peers.
It is low. I think what impacts us is the rand of exchange. So from a dollar perspective, it's also because of where we are from a regional perspective, we don't have a whole lot of funding mechanisms. So a lot of the funding comes from government organizations. I mean, a small business needs to go to a bank. That business case and the business plan discussion becomes a tedious one, where if you look at Western enterprises or businesses, they literally have individuals that are willing to take that risk and fund. Whereas here, a lot of that dependency is coming up from a government perspective.
Sure, when you approach the banks for funds, you need to have a plan that reflects that you have funds before you can actually convince them to actually give you the funds you need as an entrepreneur.
And it's a challenge because not everybody can put up a business plan. I think someone can explain to you what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and how they can make money out of that, but can't put it on paper. You know, whereas that's where a lot of the funding mechanisms in other parts of the world, guys understand, guys are willing to say, okay, fine, I can see the vision, I can see the picture of what you're looking to achieve, and let's see how we can make this happen.
And definitely a huge challenge given the dire economic circumstances right now. Banks would not want to get into risky projects given that growth is so low, projected at around 2% for the next 2 to 5 years in South Africa.
That's true. And
chronic resource problems like the ongoing Eskom crisis as well. And one would also assume that this would damper entrepreneurship, the spirit of entrepreneurship, with people themselves not wanting to take those risks.
Sure. And it's an interesting situation to be in, where we got to understand that banks are in business. They have to make a profit, but there's also an opportunity where we need to pick up on certain skills. We need to see the gaps. So wherever Eskom is having challenges, we need to see those gaps. I always say South Africa, to a certain extent, is an economy of mistaken opportunities. I mean, if you look at that, how the whole green initiative has popped up in South Africa with solar panels, UPSs, and car chargers and power banks. That's purely because electricity is such an issue. We're seeing now with the water crisis. We're seeing that whole borehole, the whole water tank business all booming up. So we should learn to see some opportunities and obviously the tough times that we're in at this point in time.
There are two groups of people I've encountered. The first group of people that have bought into the bleak outlook offered by economists, and a second group of people that I call the eternal optimists that sees these circumstances as the perfect catalyst to grow entrepreneurship ideas. I think I fall into the latter group because I think we should look at economic indicators and look at the external environment as well as the domestic environment as a form of caution, but not to damper entrepreneurship growth. That's how I see it. At the end of the day, you have to be competitive. If you have a great idea, you have to dig deep to get investors to buy into your idea anyway.
That's true. I think a lot of people that have come up with some of the best products, best solutions globally and in history came through obviously seeing that, the economy was looking bleak and things were tough for everybody. And they came up with a solution. I mean, we have a local guy from Limpopo who basically came up with a solution to make waterless bathing, instead of using water and a lot of soap. And that soap in itself, I mean, is now a global phenomenon. He's patented that. So I agree with you that we need to be optimistic. I mean, we hear people talking today when the city of Tshwane, city of Johannesburg are offering people free Wi-Fi. People are saying, no, it's a luxury. But if you look on the flip side of that, the question is, do you realize that by giving people free Wi-Fi, you actually giving them the world's internet and the world's knowledge
and access to markets, which is so important. In fact,
Precisely.
there are a lot of successful business models that started out on Facebook, on social media, because immediately once you have that access, your budget, your sales and marketing budget has been significantly cut down because
Precisely.
you have that global access.
Things like blogs. I mean, people didn't know that, a blog is essentially your own personal website. So small things like that, like access to Wi-Fi, even if it's 300 megs, it potentially for someone that has a contract, that's a lot of money being saved.
Great opportunity to see ourselves as brands and just get out there. Tell us about the exciting projects you're working on, Ruckus, because you have quite an ambitious plan stretching across sub-Saharan Africa.
We do. I mean, we initially, our strength has always been in big open spaces, where we've partnered up with the local government from a Tshwane perspective, where now they've covered, their goal is to cover the whole of the city and, the different areas of the metro with free Wi-Fi. So we've partnered up with different organizations to make that a possibility.
That is huge progress.
It's huge progress. I mean, we also engaging with other smaller black-owned businesses, looking at in Soweto, looking at certain areas in the Free State where I'm talking to youngsters, that are willing to say, guys, can you help us out? This is what we're looking at doing. This is what we're looking at achieving. And some part of that is obviously with the U.S. Embassy, where they're looking at coming to us and saying, guys, what are you doing from a Wi-Fi perspective? How can we work hand in hand? So our goal is essentially to make sure that everybody gets access to the technology. And obviously with certain partnership, looking at making that as affordable as possible. And
certainly Soweto is a very enterprising area.
It is.
That is where some of our country's greatest entrepreneurs came from, Soweto.
Look, I think all townships have entrepreneurs. I mean, if you look at the tavern infrastructure, if you're looking at the concept of where the taxi business started.
And we need Wi-Fi there because they've become huge tourist destinations in South Africa.
They are, and not just tourist destinations.
They're not townships as we knew them.
Sure,
they're they have their own identity. They're very unique locations.
You're precisely right, because now people in townships now have access to Facebook and Twitter. So imagine if somebody in a township had a following of about 1,000 odd people. I mean, that's 1,000 odd people they never had a year ago. But if they get access to a Wi-Fi hotspot where they can tweet, give an update, or give some kind of background as to what it is that they're doing, what's happening in the township. I mean, salons. If you're looking at spaza shops, if some people are able to huddle around selling vegetables, around a Wi-Fi hotspot, that on its own is progress, because we're saving people money by providing that kind of technology.
Yeah, that's very inspirational. Just one last question. What do you think of the SME ministry that was set up last year? We've been hearing mixed sentiment about their approach and old problems coming up again, like concerns around the regulatory environment that needs to be addressed.
Look, I think it's a good idea. I believe there needs to be a focus around that. What I'd also would have loved to see is that department, that ministry, and the Ministry of Department of Basic Education working together. Because in my view, I think entrepreneurship or financial help or health be used as a subject from a school perspective.
It needs to start at that level to
because,
inculcate this culture.
So they can grow up with it. At this point in time, it starts off after school or maybe in high school. Certain schools are using it here and there, but the ministry is a good idea. I just think the ministry concept should have come up a long time ago, and would have the time now for it to be stable and for that momentum to grow would have been solid. I think right now they're still caught up in certain challenges, understanding what the role of the CRPC is, how we can make that quick turnaround, partnering up with things like CETA to say CETA needs to have opportunities for small businesses. And I think, look, in my view, I think they'll get there. It's just a matter of, it gaining momentum and people actually giving the time to get there.
Well, thank you so much for your feedback on this very exciting subject, entrepreneurship. Hope to have you in again sometime.
No, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's a pleasure.
It's good talking to you.